Hey guys, Cody here. I don't know about you, but last week was a little tense. We are coming off the heels of the Mars-Pluto opposition, which may have sparked some power struggles. Maybe you had a wake-up call or two, or brought up some buried stuff, for you to face or to look at, even though you might not have wanted to. Might have stirred something in the depths a little bit. We also had a new moon in the sign of Taurus that was square the Mars-Pluto stuff. This was kind of a grounding reset amidst the pressure and a kind of, initiation process that urged us to have a little bit of patience perhaps and a goal to build something that lasts and endures among the chaos. So that new moon was, I used the analogy last week of a rice cooker in a sense. It's like we were in that pressure cooker and we planted the seed in that moment, and that seed is going to have to unfold over the course of this lunation and I think ultimately teach us resilience. That was the word of the week last week. And so I think, that's something to focus on a little bit this week, is how is this process unfolding and where can I be a little bit more resilient? We also came off of Venus's third and final conjunction with Saturn. It may have brought up a kind of a sobering moment perhaps, or a reality check, or a sense of maturation around relationships, resources, values, desires, and pleasure. Again, this is the third time, so it was tied into the Venus retrograde process, so you probably learned some lessons and came back at it this time with a new lens, kind of a little more mature lens perhaps, a little bit more insightful lens. So hopefully that was pretty nice for you. Luckily, we get a bit of a break this week. It's kind of slow. I think this week is kind of like an adjustment to all of the energy that happened over the last couple weeks. So there's still this kind of sense of integrating and processing, but it's not so like packed or tense as last week. The big thing that we have this week really is Venus moving back into Aries and conjoining Neptune. Venus is in her detriment here, so it's a bit more brash and self-centered than Venus would normally be. And when she makes a conjunction to Neptune, that fiery passion in Venus is going to meet a kind of zealous devotion in Neptune. Expect a bit of blurred lines and passion mixed with this sense of idealism or a sense of illusion as well. I'm Cody. I'm an astrologer who likes to get you through the week ahead by diving into the transits and in the planetary alignments and seeing what kind of energies you may face this week. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with these astrological transits, and like this video if you enjoy this content. It really helps. And please, please, please do not hesitate to comment below on what I got right, what I got wrong, how you see it differently, how you see it the same, how these transits are working out for you, what part of your chart are they hitting. I really like to know, and I really like to learn from you guys how these transits are unfolding on like an individual basis. So please don't hesitate to comment below. I don't want to invite a bunch of shit either, so keep it constructive. If I was wrong about something or you saw something I missed, I'm all for it. Just do it in a way that is nice. Let's dive in. Let's get into the week ahead and see what's in store. On Monday, April 28th, we start off with the moon in Taurus all day. She's not doing much during the day. She's hanging out in Taurus. She's in her comfort zone. She wants to get cushy and vibey and cozy. By the evening, she makes a conjunction with Uranus, which brings up some sudden shifts or disruptions. She'll sextile Saturn in the process, grounding, giving us a sense of stability and perhaps a little bit of structure and discipline. And she will sextile Venus overnight, leading to some late night romantic opportunities. I'm going to leave that in there. So here, it is what it is. Overall, on Monday, the day starts grounded with the moon in Taurus. It's coming off of the new moon. It's integrating those energies that were planted under the pressure cooker of Mars and Pluto. Lean into that Taurean kind of comfort in the morning and that appreciation of the sensual things. Savor a nice breakfast. Get a warm bowl of oatmeal and berries and honey, and just enjoy the calm morning, the calm start, the little piece of heaven you can find amongst the chaos of the day. Enjoy that in the morning. If you're one that's normally up and at 'em and ready to go, you might feel a little sluggish or a little bit less uninspired, but it'll have a more steady kind of consistent flow. Really lean into that and just kind of enjoy the moment there. After coming off all the shit we came off last week and the week before, even those types of us that like to go and keep on going, just take a break and enjoy that coffee and sit on the porch, watch the sunrise, whatever you need to do on Monday to start your day off in a way that is very Taurean and in touch with the sensual parts of life. By the evening time, we have the moon's conjunction with Uranus. This is going to disrupt that fixed earth comfort that we're seeking in Taurus. So expect some sudden changes or unexpected news or last minute visitors or any kind of shift in plans. Maybe you made dinner plans and you show up and the reservation was on for tomorrow or at a different time that you already missed, like little things like that, nothing crazy. This can also spark creative breakthroughs, new ideas around finances or, art or how you involve yourself with nature or things that are more body oriented and sensual and natural. Those kinds of, that'll be the themes of the disruptions in a sense. You may have a little bit more of an emotional restlessness as the moon conjuncts Uranus. Uranus is it's like lightning, it's like electric. And so when the moon hits Taurus, your emotions, your intuitive body is going to feel a little bit more electric. So keep that in mind, keep that restlessness aspect, in mind, and try to, find a little bit of freedom in the rigidity or find a little bit of freedom in the comfort or a little bit of freedom in the routines that you have and the daily kind of life that you have. What, baby? After that conjunction to Uranus, the moon will make a nice little subtle supportive sextile to Saturn in Pisces. I like this. That grounds that kind of electricness into something that is enduring and practical and useful. Any kind of sudden shifts or insights or unexpected changes or plans will actually have an opportunity to ground themselves in something that's emotionally resilient. It offers a quiet emotional support, or a practical bit of advice in a sense to the moon. It's like Saturn is the wise elder coming from a spiritual, devotional, kind of compassionate angle in Pisces, and it's offering a subtle piece of advice to the moon who just had this unexpected shift or this unexpected kind of change of plans that's throwing it out of its comfort zone. So take advantage of that. Any plans, come back on track. Any kind of disruptions will align back up and become a little bit more smooth, I think. And any kind of creative insights or any kind of, breakthroughs that you had with the moon conjunct Uranus can have a moment to kind of be implemented and to be grounded into something practical. I like that. It's a bit like an emotional clarity after the kind of disruption. Late evening, overnight, we've got the moon making a sextile to Venus. I like this. Venus is still in Pisces right now, so it's romantic, it's idealistic, and the moon is in Taurus. It's sensual and wants comfort and closeness. And there's a sense of, kind of reception there because Venus is exalted in Pisces, but it rules Taurus, and so it looks fondly at the moon, and the moon is in Venus's sign looking fondly back at Venus. So, oh, hey cat. Speaking of fondness, look at this baby girl. That's Nishi. She's the mascot of the show. Where was I? Oh yes. The moon sextile Venus. This is a romantic aspect, especially happening overnight. I really like this. If you're dating somebody or going on a date or with a partner or married, whatever your situation is, a little sexy time, late night romance. I don't know. This sextile to Venus is great for that. Overall, it's a mostly kind of a calm day on Monday. There might be some sudden disruptions or unexpected shifts in your plans towards the end of the day, but they're fleeting and Saturn comes in and grounds them. I don't know. I like today. It's going to be chill and relatively chill compared to all the shit we just been through in that little sextile to, Venus overnight. It's kind of sweet and it's a nice kind of way to start the week, I think. On Tuesday, April 29th, we've got the moon coming off of that sexy sextile with Venus in Pisces. The moon will move into Gemini where she will sextile Neptune, trine Pluto, and sextile Mars all in the morning. I love this for Tuesday morning. I think we're off to a better start this week than we were previously. I think all these kind of tense aspects are separating a little bit. So, the worst of it is over and we're kind of getting a sense of the lay of the land. And with Monday being kind of chill and calm with the moon in Taurus, maybe some sudden disruptions or unexpected shit happening, but ultimately relatively stable. We move into Tuesday where with the moon in Gemini, this changes a little bit, there's this feeling of wanting to communicate, wanting to reach out. It's a less kind of like in my comfort zone, chilling at home, all cozy and nice, and more like, let's go be social and let's go interact and learn something. And so coming off that sextile from Venus and Pisces as the moon moves into Gemini, there might be this lingering sense of romanticism or optimism or sense of emotional ease as we start the day. And I like that. Maybe you took my advice and had a date night last night and maybe it went well and you feel more connected and you wake up ready to kind of, take advantage of the day. And, whenever you're feeling yourself, you become a little bit more social, a little bit more chatty. You're more open and willing to explore ideas and talk to people. And I think that's kind of the vibe on Tuesday morning. As the moon moves into Gemini, think texts, calls, emails, errands that need to be ran. Things start to kind of pile up a little bit and kind of buzz. And there's this energy with Gemini. You may be making social plans for the evening, for the rest of the week, or meetings start to like pop up on your calendar. It's a great kind of energy for multitasking and for learning or brainstorming or any kind of those pursuits. There may be an inner restlessness if the moon rules our emotions and our inner world, and Gemini being kind of a scattered, mutable, all over the place air sign. There might be a sense of restlessness and needing to accomplish or do stuff or explore, but that can really fuel, a sense of curiosity and an ability to learn during this time. So I really like it. I'm a Gemini rising, so I like a little biased. Shortly after the moon moves into Gemini, she will make a sextile to Neptune, and this offers a nice creative boost. Neptune is in Aries. It has bold visions. It has, zealous ideas about how, creativity and your creative self should express. So that, sextile to the moon offers an imagination that soars, with a blend of this Gemini kind of quick wit, wanting to learn and connect all the facts and deconstruct and reconfigure. This makes miscommunication possible as well as being kind of too scattered. So make sure to double check your stuff and prioritize what's happening. But ultimately with the sextile, there's this kind of inspired kind of feeling to all your ideas, yet you might be having a lot of ideas, so they might be a little fleeting. So make sure to jot them down or to write them out or talk to them with a friend so that you can kind of parse out what matters and what doesn't and what kind of has staying power. But ultimately, I love the moon sextile Neptune. After the moon makes a sextile to Neptune in Aries, she will make a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. I also love this because this adds a depth and intensity and a rawness and a primal sense of power to the imaginative, fiery ideals of Neptune in Aries. So Pluto will push that buzzing energy of Gemini toward a depth or an intensity, but in a way that's harmonious and helpful. Thoughts and emotions will be very powerful during this time. Communication may reveal hidden truths, or there might be some kind of mental power shifts where you just feel mentally empowered and clear and probing. It's a great time for researching or problem solving any big ideas, going down that rabbit hole and like really figuring it out and trying to understand it. Maybe you got inspired by the sextile to Neptune, and then Pluto gives you this mental power to like act on that inspiration. It's an opportunity to confront fears you have around not acting if you have this dreamy, visiony kind of ideal with the sextile to Neptune, but you're afraid to move forward, or you're afraid of the power that you have within yourself in order to make that happen. This is a great time to confront those fears and, look at those truths and those things, those hard truths around your beliefs and your mental constraints and what's keeping you in that small kind of space, not feeling like you have the confidence or the power to move forward with those inspirations and with those ideals. Later on in the morning, shortly after, we've got a sextile to Mars. This morning is powerful, but it's synergistic. So again, we're not as calm as we were on Monday. However, these aspects through the sextile and the trine and, those are supportive and they're harmonious. So there's some energy there and it's buzzing, but it feels like it flows. And I really like that. Mars in the morning will add some grit to all of this and add some fiery boldness, some fuel to be able to take action on those inspirations and those inner truths and those powers that we got from Neptune and Pluto. Bold moves pay off right now, especially with the sextiles and the trines. Like, act on something that matters to you. Act on something that you're working towards that you might be a little afraid to go for, but you know you want and you have the courage to do it. It's really going to pay off with this sextile to Mars. Tackling any tasks you have with energy and enthusiasm, there's this subtle surge of confidence. So anything you've been putting off that feels a little like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do it, or I'm not sure if I have the skills, like what's going to happen, any self-doubt that you have, now's the time to like push through that and to work on that. I think it's a super powerful moment. Be mindful, although, there's sextiles and trines, there might be a tendency to be a little bit overly brash and impulsive, and tempers may flare a little bit, or arguments may crop up subtly. I don't think it's huge, but just be mindful of that as you navigate things. Oftentimes, as we assert ourselves, it's going to cause some friction among other people, and that's natural, that's okay. And it seems like with the sextiles and the trines today, that it's that kind of feeling. It's not like, oh, I'm forcing myself and they're forcing themselves and we're locked in this tug of war and our horns are locked and nobody's moving like it was, in previous weeks. This feels more like I'm asserting myself and people aren't used to that. And so there's going to be an adjustment period. And that adjustment period is normal, and that's okay. It's a little bit different than the energy we're coming off of. Overall, Tuesday is a whirlwind of energy, but it's productive and it's supportive. And there might be this flood of communication and this flood of ideas and inspiration. And it's a very buzzy kind of energy. Overall, Neptune fuels this a bit through a sextile with creativity and dreaminess and romanticism. Pluto will fuel it through a trine, pushing us to dig deeper and to confront hidden truths and to bring our personal power out and to tap into that. And Mars adds a fiery motivation to the mix to get it all done and to take action. Overall, I love Tuesday. It's going to be a little bit more energetic than Monday, but embrace the morning buzz and, jot down any ideas or any brainstorming kind of sessions that you have and get ready to tackle those tasks as the moon hits Pluto and Mars. Use the rest of the day to follow through. Whatever kind of inspiration you had in the morning and mental buzz that you had, or connections you made, or insights you had, or actions you took, use the rest of the day to follow through on those. On Wednesday, April 30th, we've got the moon still in Gemini. As we wake up, she is coming off of a sextile to Mercury that happens overnight. She will conjoin Jupiter in Gemini midday and then square Saturn in the evening. I kind of like this transit. The square to Saturn adds a little bit of something towards the end of the day, but overall, coming off that sextile with Mercury is nice, and then conjoining Jupiter in Gemini is kind of nice as well. We've also got Venus moving into Aries today, where she slowly starts to apply to a conjunction to Neptune. So that's kind of the bigger transit of the day today as the moon does its thing through Pisces. So waking up overnight, we had the sextile from the moon to Mercury. And, ideas might spark overnight. You might have a little bit of a restless energy as you try to sleep overnight. You might just be buzzing with ideas. I have this written down, like late night rabbit holes fueled by curiosity. I don't know if you're ever laying in bed and you wake up at 3 a.m. and you have a random idea, and I know it's bad and you shouldn't do it, but you get on your phone and you start researching the idea, and it leads you down this TikTok rabbit hole or this Reddit rabbit hole, and you blink and it's 5 o'clock in the morning and you just wasted an hour and a half, 2 hours going down some random rabbit hole deep dive. That's kind of the vibe I get, but it's not so bad because it's a sextile. So it's you don't necessarily, maybe if it was a square, you woke up and you're exhausted, but with the sextile, there might be this, you might learn something that you're excited to apply, especially with the conjunction to Jupiter coming up. It's you did some late night rabbit hole diving, and now you come up and you're waking up in the morning with this kind of mental clarity, and you're ready to tackle the new ideas that you had. That's kind of the vibe I get with the moon sextile to Mercury overnight. Then the moon will conjoin Jupiter, which will, bring an expansive kind of feeling, but possibly a little scattered or fragmented. Curiosity will be amplified. So maybe whatever you dug deep into or went down the rabbit hole with, the sextile to Mercury, now maybe that's amplified a little bit, and you're a little bit optimistic and you're learning, and, there's this risk of excess or taking something too far or being mentally scattered, but you're kind of on this Gemini train where these ideas are flowing and they're starting to gain some traction, but there's this risk of overcommitting, or there's an exaggeration of the knowledge perhaps, and a need to kind of ground it in something practical. So be mindful as the moon conjuncts Jupiter. You're going to feel expansive and optimism. You might have these big ideas fueled by some kind of, scattered energy, like you're going over here, getting distracted, but it's like these ideas are flowing. During this process, prioritize, try to, pick 1 or 2 or 3 ideas to focus on rather than going down every rabbit hole. It's a great time to connect and to make travel plans, or to write letters, or to learn something, pick up a book, get your message out there. That's really good for the moon conjunct Jupiter. By the evening, all of these ideas, all of this optimism, all of this intellectual curiosity and rabbit hole diving will meet Saturn through a square. This is a reality check, and it will test our patience. Delays, tough talks, this need for discipline or control. You may have felt mentally fragmented throughout the day, and Saturn's coming in and like trying to make structure out of it and organize it, but the moon's still in Gemini, so it wants to wants to keep being curious and explore. So there's this tension there. You may feel like heavy, a little bit tired, a little bit worn out from the energy of the day, maybe a little bit melancholic or emotionally kind of unsettled. It's time for a break. Don't be afraid to take a break, to reassess, and to kind of just like stop all the mental chatter for a minute and like dive into that Saturn and Pisces stuff. Maybe meditate or journal or ground yourself in something kind of a little bit more spiritual or emotional. Throughout the day today, we've got Venus moving from her exaltation in Pisces to her detriment in Aries as she applies to a conjunction to Neptune. In Aries, Venus acts boldly but impulsively, and Aries brings a passion and Neptune brings this illusion. And so there's this mix of, bold passion, but maybe idealistic illusion. Relationships will ignite as Venus moves into Aries. There might be new attractions, creative pursuits. You feel a little bit more flirty, or this rush of urgency to make connections. You might have, this impulse to want to spend or to splurge monetarily on things. There might be this over-idealization of material goods, or this over-romanticization of romanticization? This overly romantic view of partnerships, that could be kind of a risk. You might meet somebody new and you fall head over heels into this like romantic story that you're telling yourself, and you're boldly flirting and taking action based on that story. But then, with Neptune, maybe it was an illusion or something that you're projecting rather than the reality of the situation. So be mindful of things that can be a little bit misleading. As Venus, brings our desires and what we love, and in Aries, it seeks autonomy and freedom. There's this craving of authenticity, of wanting to go after what we desire with courage and with zeal. But things get a little bit blurry as she applies to Neptune. There's this dreamy kind of haze that's on the battlefield of love, so to speak. And so it's really asking us, like, what are we fighting for? And is it in alignment with our values and our true desires, or is it an illusion or a projection that I'm, convincing myself is real but is not? Keep that in mind, especially as Venus starts to conjoin Neptune throughout the following days. Overall, lean into the morning's energy to connect and to brainstorm or to learn something new. If the evening feels heavy with the square to Saturn, tap into some self-care again, meditate, take a bath. Wait until that kind of frustration or that sense of like melancholic delay, obstacle kind of vibe. Just lean into it and kind of just wait till it passes, because it will pass. And with Venus moving into Aries, enjoy the passion, enjoy the bold urge to go after your desires and make those romantic gestures, but just make sure that you're checking your impulses and that you're not acting out of this place where you're, making up this ideal scenario in your mind that's not really matching reality. I could see this Venus in Aries conjunct Neptune as like you meet somebody and you're just you don't see any of the red flags, but like all your friends are seeing the red flags, but you're like, you've convinced yourself there's no red flags. That's kind of the vibe of Venus meeting Neptune in Aries. It's like you're going after what you want, but you're ignoring all the red flags along the way. So be mindful of that. On Thursday, May 1st, we're starting off the month with the moon moving from Gemini into Cancer, where she will square Venus and Neptune early on, and then sextile the sun in the evening. This is interesting because we're really getting a dose of that Venus-Neptune, and with the moon in Cancer, there's this square there. So those red flags that we talked about yesterday, you might get more of a sense there as there's some kind of tension between your emotional security and the relationships that you're going after that are clashing, and that might reveal some kind of cracks in that dreamy idealization that we might have with the Venus-Neptune conjunction. Ultimately, with the moon in Cancer, it's kind of wrapping us in a warm blanket of nurturing and comfort, and this is kind of in contrast to Gemini's buzzy mental energy. And so it's asking us to tap into our emotional needs today and connect with these, and to relate to others that understand us and that, get us, instead of like exploring and being curious. There's a different kind of curiosity, I guess, with the moon in Cancer. It's this emotional kind of process. Early in the morning, we've got that moon square to Venus, then shortly after squaring Neptune. This is a bit of friction again. Like I said, the social, emotional vibes feel off perhaps. There's like relationship tiffs that arise, or impulsive spending, or some kind of, disruption to your comfort in that sense. There's a restless desire of Venus and Aries that faces off with this Cancerian need for emotional comfort and security, and the Neptune square complicates this with a fuzziness or an intangibleness. There's a confusion or a haze that blurs our emotions or our plans. Miscommunications may happen during this time. There might be vague goals. You may not have a clear sense of where you're going, or there might be a stall in progress, or a resolution might be hard to come to during this time. You may also be prone to like oversensitivity or getting muddled in emotions, fantasies, or daydreams. It's a great morning for meditating, or for yoga, or journaling, or any working out, any kind of like spiritual, physical pursuit where you can kind of embody the here-ness of things will be very helpful. You can tap into that dreamy creative energy and that friction without kind of letting it go out to other people. Intuition will be heightened during this time, and logic will be, out the window in a sense. By the evening time, the moon will move away from that square and will integrate it a little bit, and she'll make a sextile to the sun in Taurus. Again, remember, this lunar cycle is all about building resilience. And so that square to Venus and Neptune is how can we face, our illusions and our delusions and our over-idealism about things, in terms of what reality is, in a way that builds resilience, and that we don't get hardened by that, but we get, wise. We can be able to develop discernment. And with the sextile to the sun, this fosters kind of a harmony between the sun, what we're trying to do, our goals, and our emotions. And it's a bit of a grounding kind of support because the sun is coming from a place in Taurus. So it's good for wrapping up any loose ends that kind of felt like they weren't, tied up earlier on in the day, or, reaching out to family or friends for a nice meal to really ground the energies from the day. It offers a bit of clarity or ease after the friction that was brought by the Mars-Neptune square. Any confusion or too good to be true, kind of ignoring the red flags nature kind of starts to wane a little bit. And if you think of the moon in Cancer as the heart and the soul, it aligns with an earthy calmness with the sun. It's a great evening to just kind of ease into things on Thursday. Overall, on Thursday, we start with some emotional waves that come ashore and get grounded by the evening with the sun in Taurus. Early on, there's restlessness, confusion, or sensitivity that by the evening becomes kind of a focused calm, and, the sun comes in to like reassure us that, okay, you may be off in this weird haze, but the world exists, material reality exists, nature exists, and let's bring it back to here. Ride the haze in the morning. Try to just like be calm with not knowing where you're going. Breathe through any impulsive urges or uncertainty. And then by the end of the day, lean into your routines. Ground yourselves in, conversations with loved ones in the evening, or a nice meal to kind of balance out the Thursday. On Friday, May 2nd, we've got the moon in Cancer making a square to Mercury, and then a sextile to Uranus overnight. So in the morning, we've got the moon square Mercury. This sparks a tension between, fiery, bold thoughts and communication with Mercury in Aries, and the moon's need for emotional support, nurturing, and sensitivity with the moon in Cancer. So this is really, feelings versus mind, or, heart versus mind, that kind of dynamic. There might be some rushed talks or miscommunications that lead to hurt feelings or get misunderstood in a way, and creates this defensiveness in the moon. Mercury in Aries can make quick, brash decisions, and those may falter or fall through because the emotions are clouded, or, the thinking wasn't really checking in with the heart and they were at odds and doing different things. It's kind of a bit of an edgy tone to the morning. Mercury wants to speak directly and cut through the fluff, but Cancer needs to feel deeply and to have emotional security and safety. And sometimes that's, the fluff that Mercury in Aries wants to cut through. So be very mindful of your words and how your words have impact on other people's feelings, and vice versa. Like, if you feel hurt by somebody else's words, just, keep in mind that they may not have meant it that way. And not that it's good or bad, but just you might be a little bit more sensitive in this time to other people's words. Into the late evening and overnight, the moon will make a sextile to Uranus. Again, this is going to be overnight for most of us, or late night for those on the West Coast. So just, it's a supportive kind of shift of some kind, unexpected news, or plans might change. You might have a creative spark. It might bring a innovative solution to any kind of mind-heart conflict that arose earlier in the day. Again, this is happening overnight, so may not be much for you. Throughout the day, all day on Friday, we've got one of our biggest transits of the week, which is, Venus conjoining Neptune. This is kind of coloring the whole week, and it perfects on Friday. It's, a fiery amplification of our passions, our desires in Venus, and our visions and our dreams in Neptune. Aries pushes Venus to chase its desires with a sense of urgency and maybe a sense of recklessness. And Neptune's adds a devotion, an inspiration, or an illusion, perhaps, a kind of visionary, chaotic force to the mix. Being that this is Venus, this alignment is going to impact our relationships, our resources, our creativity, our desires, and, those relational, aesthetic kind of Venusian themes are going to fuse with the Neptunian transcendental, boundary dissolving nature of the Neptunian archetype. So romance and attraction may spark. This might feel electric or destined or larger than life. Even I have cinematic written down, like Neptune rules things like movies and motion pictures and things of that nature, photographs. And there's this tendency for our relationships or creative projects or our desires or resources to be like cinematic or movie-like in some way. With that said, keep in mind, because movies aren't reality, right? So Neptune can risk misreading intentions, or, bold flirtations and deepening bonds through shared dreams are great, but we might be looking at those things through rose-colored glasses and not a practical kind of sense. And so it's great, like, get in tune with that, but also keep in mind that it might be fleeting and might be as sweet as it sounds. Venus ruling finances and Neptune ruling delusions or illusions or things that aren't as they seem. Finances kind of demand caution during this time. You might overspend, or you might fall for like too good to be true schemes. Maybe you're like trying to scalp tickets for a concert and you find, floor seats for $100, and you get the tickets, and then you realize that like they weren't floor seats, they were like up in the rafters, and you overspent on a ticket that you thought was a good ticket. It's that kind of vibe, so be mindful of that. Social scenes kind of might hum with this like Neptunian magic and be a little bit more dreamy, which is kind of cool. There might be this need to escape a little bit through ecstatic dance, or like losing yourself in drugs and ecstasy or pleasures. So be mindful of that. Miscommunications or overhyped plans might be kind of common. And you might, hear about this awesome rager and this party, and in your mind it's this awesome thing, and you get there and it's just not what you expected. So be mindful of disappointment, perhaps. Overall, it's a great energy for creative projects, especially with the boldness of Aries. It's not a very practical aspect, but you don't never need to be. It doesn't always need to be practical. It can just be kind of creative and fun. Just be mindful of like half-baked ideas and things that, might come up during this time that you might have some hard time following through on. Ultimately, this is the archetypal lover with Venus meeting the archetypal mystic with Neptune in this fiery battlefield of Aries ruled by Mars. There's this deep transcendent feeling to fight through something and to prove yourself in order to gain connection or creativity or some kind of resources or relationship. Be mindful of seeing what you want to see versus what's actually there. That's a big theme with Neptune. Don't mistake infatuation for fate or destiny. I have that underlined. So like Neptune, especially in Aries, can bring this infatuation, but is it destiny and is it fate, or are you just like lying to yourself? That's going to be a theme, so be mindful of that. And boundaries will blur in all things Venusian, for better and for worse. So pause to discern and kind of get your bearings as things kind of feel a little looser in the Venusian domains. Coming off of the Venus-Neptune conjunction on Saturday, May 3rd, we've got the moon in Cancer making a trine to Saturn early on before she moves into Leo, where she makes a trine between Neptune and Venus. She will then oppose Pluto midday and conjoin Mars in the evening. I liked this start to the day. We've got, we start off the morning with trines. We have got the moon trine Saturn early on before probably most of us wake up. And then we've got the moon moving into Leo, where she's a little bit more bold, expressive, warm, kind of outward oriented and ready to go. She'll make a trine to that recently conjoined Venus and Neptune. I like that for the morning. To me, with the moon in Cancer, there's this emotional nurturing and this protectiveness kind of, emotional security, guardedness. And then that trine to Saturn is really like, what do I need to feel safe spiritually? What do I need to feel safe emotionally? How do I feel secure in my emotions and not shut myself off, but also stand my ground? And that trine is offering us this opportunity to really build on that and to start a good foundation for the day on Saturday. Then she'll move into Leo, where she's done with the waterworks and she's ready to express and be authentic and embody her true self. And she'll make a trine to that Neptune and Venus in Aries. So we go from a water trine to a fire trine. So after that emotional kind of process of the moon trining Saturn, perhaps while we're sleeping, we'll move into a fire trine between Venus and Neptune. With the moon in Leo, it's expressive, it's warm, it adds a radiance, especially after that, water trine to Saturn, which can be a little bit more reserved and a little bit more restrained. And Neptune will add a dreaminess, and the trine to Venus will add kind of a creativity and a connection of some sort. So there's a fiery, passionate flow in the morning coming off that trine to Saturn. The creativity might soar and social connections might shine a little bit. There's this optimism or this hope through the trine, that I really think it's like whatever we work through with the Venus, the Venus-Neptune conjunction, the moon is really going to like highlight that and amp that up coming from Leo. There's this optimism and this hope and this emotional expression that flows with the bold vision and the passionate desires of Venus. It's a great window between the, trine to Saturn and the opposition to Pluto that's coming up today. And the moon will bring a charisma and a joy, while Venus brings kind of a impulsive harmony and an urge to connect in a bold way. And Neptune adds a, dreamy sense of devotion or transcendent to the mix. I kind of like this trine in the morning. By midday, we've got the opposition to Pluto, so that, moon, Neptune, Venus party meets a darkness, a wet blanket, something heavy with Pluto. That personal shine of the moon in Leo will meet a collective hard truth of some sort, and there might be power struggles that emerge or authority clashes that test our confidence coming from Leo. There might be these deep ideological, collective, like systematic level insights with Pluto and Aquarius that kind of burst the dreamy, idealistic bubble of the Venus-Neptune situation. So any red flags that you were ignoring before are probably very apparent now. And it feels like with this opposition to Pluto, the moon is really, especially coming off the trine with the Venus-Neptune conjunction, the moon is really like, okay, you had your fun, like, here's a hidden truth that you weren't seeing. It's almost like you see this really pretty crystal out in the wild, and then it's like awesome, and it's like this perfect crystal, and then you pick it up, and it's like there's all these bugs underneath. It's like, well, the bugs were always there. You just didn't see them. And so that's very much this vibe as the moon opposes Pluto midday on Saturday. These inner shadows or these inner depths of ourselves will rise to oppose this ego's facade of the moon in Leo. Confront fears in this darkness in a bold manner. With Mars and Leo, that'll be kind of helpful. And again, build strength and resilience through this process. It's almost like, the moon on Leo's on a stage, and it wants to shine and express, and sometimes those are coping mechanisms, and sometimes those are based on what other people want and not based on our own true authenticity. And we may have lost a lot of that with the Venus-Neptune conjunction. We may have lost a part of what's authentic, and we may have got caught up in the daydream. Well, Pluto's coming in and being like, well, what about this part of you that you try to ignore? What about this part of you that's showing your attachment wound? And what about this part of you that shows your mother or father wound? It's like Pluto's starting to like poke holes in that idealism and that over romanticism. So it's actually pretty helpful because we need that. We need to temper some of that Neptunian energy, but through the nature of the opposition, we may not want to see it, and there may be this tension or this force that we're kind of grappling with. After going through all that, we've got the moon making a conjunction to Mars in Leo. This is a bit of an energy boost. Maybe you've got that confidence after working through the opposition to Pluto. You went through the underworld, you've been initiated, and you're coming out on the other side of the opposition with a little bit of courage and a little bit of zeal and zest. So you emerge valiant and courageous after that journey in the underworld. Tackle any remaining tasks or anything that came up. Maybe hit the gym for a late night session with some confidence. It is Saturday. Maybe you go out on the town and have a good time, knowing that you've grappled with yourself and you have a truer version of who you are, meeting those Plutonian shadows. This is a passionate and fearless kind of energy, but be mindful that Mars does rule aggression and tempers may flare. There might be arguments, or, Mars can be impulsive and rash. And so shine your light, have your confidence, but make sure it's not stepping on other people's toes, and make sure it's not a power play or, you're burning a trail behind you that's leaving others in the dust. It's very important. Overall on Saturday, we've got that somber kind of nice, emotionally steady start to the day. We've got that dreamy, fun, escapist maybe tendency with the trine to Neptune and Venus and Aries. Then we meet some darkness that pops that illusory bubble of Neptune and Venus, and we face some hidden truths or some darker aspects of ourselves that actually empower us if we use it properly. And then we hit Mars, where we have this energy and this drive to go out and make something of it. So start slow, lean into that fiery creative buzz, and then take a breath through the Plutonian tension and keep an eye out for what's evolving and what's asking you to die and to be reborn within yourself. At the end of the day, go do something bold, go rock climbing, go out, go do something fun and kind of shake off the Plutonian energy for the day. On Sunday, May 4th, we wrap up the week. The moon continues to be in Leo, where she squares the sun in the morning. This is the first quarter phase of the moon cycle. She makes a trine to Mercury in the evening and then sextiles Jupiter late at night. So with the moon in Leo making a square to the sun, the moon in Leo has charisma. It has a joy, a radiant optimism about it. And that square tension faces itself with the sun in Taurus, which is stable and wants to appreciate and wants to move slow. It's earthy. So this is, to me, expression and action versus routine and stability, and ego and desires versus our comfort zone and what feels steady and grounded. There might be this inner conflict over wanting to shine with the moon in Leo versus staying safe and comfy and eating your ice cream wrapped up in a blanket, watching the Schitt's Creek for the 8th time. there's this tension there between the moon wanting to, I want to go out and express my authentic self. I've learned all these things. But then the sun's like, well, I want to stay here and cultivate this comfort. So there's a tension there. And there might be, because they're fixed signs, there might be a stubbornness, and neither wants to budge, and it's kind of locked in a stalemate. So your confidence may wobble a little bit, but lean into the authenticity and don't force or push too hard. If you want to be comfortable, stay comfortable. If you want to take action and go out and express yourself, do that. You don't have to, you can do both. You can, just do what feels nice. Don't try to force yourself out there, but don't try to force yourself to be comfortable. If you have this urge to go out and do something, go out and do it. And don't force yourself to stay home because that's what you normally do. Or you're stuck in a routine and you won't go out and explore a little bit. But if you're feeling like you need some rest and need to stay at home with the sun in Taurus, and that's really what you feel, but there's this sense of like, I need to go be productive. I need to go do something with this energy. Maybe you just need to rest. So keep that in mind and discern the difference between the two. Midday into the evening, we have a trine to Mercury, which I think really kind of helps, especially coming off the square to the sun. This clears the moon-sun tension a little bit, and by evening, there's this bold, direct sense of being able to communicate and to think, and it aligns with our emotional expressiveness. And so if you think of the moon in Leo wanting to emotionally express ourselves, and then you have Mercury in Aries that doesn't hesitate to speak that. In that trine connecting them, there's an ability to speak what you need and an ability to have a lively chat or a discussion about how you emotionally feel and where you're emotionally at. With the moon in Leo and Mercury in Aries, the heart and mind are aligned in a fiery kind of expressive nature. So there's this inner clarity that grows, and perhaps you might have some bold insights that you communicate with someone else. Be mindful of your tone. Again, this is happening in fire signs, and the tone can be a little bit more intense for those types of us that aren't fire dominant. I'm fire dominant, so it doesn't really work for me. But for those of us who are water dominant or earth dominant, fire energy can come off very intense. So be mindful of your tone and be mindful of coming to any hasty conclusions as well. Fire signs, especially Mercury and Aries, can decide things quickly. And the moon in Leo just wants to express sometimes. And so with that trine, there's this tendency to make hasty decisions. Be mindful of all of that. Overall, I think it's nice to have this trine between our emotional needs and wants and our mind and how we communicate those to other people. Into the evening and late night, we've got a nice sextile to Jupiter. This is overnight. We might be asleep at Sunday. Might be, go to sleep early. But overall, this brings a subtle optimism or hope to the vibe. I like it. There's this overnight buzz with ideas from Gemini. Maybe you're ready to start the next week and you've got some ideas of how you're going to start Monday, or the project that you've got lined up, or whatever, meetings you have. Like maybe you start getting some ideas that are, subtly supporting you or subtly trying to nudge you in a certain direction. It's good for conversing or dreaming big, if late night chats perhaps, but don't lose sleep. It's important, especially starting on Monday. Overall on Sunday, I enjoy the kind of vibe we've got. The moon will square the sun, so there might be some tension in the morning. You might wake up a little bit uneasy, but hopefully throughout the day with the trine to Mercury, you're able to work through that and resolve that in a way that's communicative, and you can express yourself authentically and clearly so that everybody involved in any tensions that arose kind of gets cleared up. And then by late night, that sextile to Jupiter really offers this cohesive kind of, mentally supportive energy to the vibe on Sunday. Overall this week, we start off with the moon in calm Taurus. It moves into Gemini where it buzzes. It dives into Cancerian emotional depths, and it ends the week in expressive Leo, shining in all of its radiance. The big shift this week was Venus moving back into Aries, where she's in her detriment and conjoining Neptune. This sparks passion, creativity, and a need to connect on a bold and impulsive level. Neptune adds this layer of dreaminess, even if it's misleading, and this element of magic and romanticism and transcendence to the mix. This week is great for jumping into new ideas, maybe taking action on the seeds planted under the pressure cooker of the new moon in Taurus, and follow any kind of romantic or flirty sparks or connections that come. They may be fleeting and they may not be as good as they look, but they may also lead to something a little bit more, bigger or unexpected that you might not have had, or teach you at the very least about yourself in ways that you might not have known. Make sure to double check any details, especially with the Neptunian haze. stay anchored to bring the bold visions of Venus conjunct Neptune and Aries down to reality. It's all great to be up there in the creative worlds and the visionary ideals, but what good is any of that if we can't bring them into the earthly realm? And there'll be time to do that. Just keep that in mind. We can't live up there forever, so don't be disappointed when, your expectations aren't met. That's just the reality of things. Lean into what lights you up this week, like really kind of keep an eye out for what is pulling you in an internal direction that feels right and feels good, but make sure to keep, again, one foot on the ground. With bold visions and these dreamy ideals meeting this fiery passion in Aries, I really like kind of the energy. There's just some pitfalls we can fall into that we need to be mindful of, like disillusionment, escapism, things not being as good as they seem, being grounded in reality. Chase that creative spark, chase that passion, chase that relationship. Just keep in mind that a lot of times reality will creep in at some point, and that's okay. That's normal. Just expect it. Overall, that's what I've got for this week. As always, comment below on how these transits might affect you, what houses they're hitting for you, where I got things right, where I got things maybe a little different than what you expected. I'd love to hear from you guys. And like this video, if you like this content, let me know. And as always, please subscribe. It really helps the channel and it keeps you up to date with the astrology and what's going on and what you can expect. As always, until next time, guys, I'll talk to you later. Take care.